Good evening, televiewers. Welcome to Prime Hour on My Media Prime. We are sorry for the late start. This evening, we're going to be looking at the occurrences that are taking place in Cameroon from natural disasters, from the floods that took lives in Buea, southwest regional capital, to the nation's capital, Yaoundé, where lives were equally claimed after the landslide that took place in the neighborhood of Mbankolo. We are going to be asking ourselves why we continue to construct houses in risk zones and what authorities are doing to preempt future occurrences and save lives for Cameroonians. We are going to be looking at this with our panelists who are in the house with me this evening. Dr. Michael Ndimancho is a lecturer with some universities in Cameroon. Is going to be participating in tonight's edition of Prime Hour. Good evening, welcome.
Thanks so much, Mr. Leo, and my heartfelt condolences to all those who are going through difficult situations like the Mbankolo crisis, disaster, and all other people in the world, like the Israelis and all other people who are going through difficult situations because of one reason, be it through human cause or through natural causes. We pray that God will continue to reign and may He continue to be on the highest throne.
We also are in the company of Tah Mai Jarvis. Good evening, Jarvis. Glad to have you.
Good evening, Mr. Kum. Good evening to the peace-loving people of the southwest, northwest, east, center, littoral, and all the parts of Cameroon, and a special good evening to those who are watching us out of the country, and also a word of comfort to those who are passing through a difficult moment, to those in Mbankolo, and also those around other areas in Cameroon which probably have not been reported. It is a difficult moment. Natural disasters sometimes can be avoided and sometimes cannot be avoided, as long as we continue to see the movement of the tectonic forces that are playing, as well as the land creeping, what is also known as the mass wasting. And so as we experience mass wasting and following the tectonic movement, these things are bound to happen. Like you said, the issue now is, can it be can preemptive measures be taken to avoid some of these situations? I'm sure that's what we are going to discuss here this evening.
Apostle Lambi Valentin Gwa is also expected to join us in tonight's edition of the program. We are starting with the situational report on what happened in Yaoundé at the Mbankolo neighborhood by Buea.
As officials proceed with preventive destruction of houses in Mbankolo, survivors and those displaced by the incident have taken up temporary residence in Komkona. The humanitarian crisis caused by the landslide has affected the ability of children to go back to school, rendering many families homeless.
What happened was truly a disaster. Although when it happened, it's my mother that discovered it and asked us to run.
We are not used to this kind of life. We hope this ends soon. We want the government to look for a suitable place for us. At the Yaoundé Central Hospital, some injured survivors are recovering, with doctors indicating that many will be discharged in the days ahead.
Nous avons fait le tour et nous constatons que les blessés sont très bien encadrés, bien suivis, et que d'après ce que le docteur...
We have noticed that the injured are well taken care of. Some will be discharged in few days. As you know, the head of state has addressed his condolences to the bereaved families. He has wished the injured a quick recovery and has asked us to take care of them and accompany the survivors in every way possible.
Et il nous a chargé d'assurer l'encadrement des blessés et d'accompagner matériellement, financièrement et psychologiquement ceux qui sont les victimes de ce drame.
Faced with this scenario, architects have been sensitizing the population to respect construction norms.
You know, we know the laws, but we always want to cut corners. Even the person wanting to build his house Instead of coming to see a professional, we'll go and look for a technician that is not qualified because they want to build at a low cost. And consequently, we have what we're experiencing all over the place. People build where they are not supposed to build. People build in swampy areas. People build without respecting norms. The quality of materials are not respected. People build and nothing is being done even in areas where they are not to build. And there's a lot of anarchy. It's rather unfortunate concerning the construction sector in the country.
Government officials on ground say if the population followed instructions, this disaster would have been prevented.
Il y a l'eau, le feu et le vent. Donc si vous êtes installé sur l'axe d'évacuation ou d'écoulement naturel de l'eau, lorsque l'eau voudra passer, l'eau va passer.
There are three things we cannot stop: water, the wind, and fire. So if you've constructed near a gutter, you have to be careful. It is difficult to stop water. We released lots of press statements 1 month ago to indicate that the weather will not be good. We announced that we will have torrential rainfall. We alerted mayors and the public to leave risky zones.
Les populations qui sont installées sur des zones non édificantes disent qu'ils libèrent ces zones-là pour que les eaux trouvent leur chemin. Et ça, c'est sur l'ensemble du territoire.
Councils and people of goodwill have been showing up with support to survivors. Many of them were already settled, but are now obliged to restart life from zero following the unfortunate disaster.
Thank you, Buea Elvis, for that situational report on what is happening in Yaoundé with respect to the landslide that took lives, leaving so many persons homeless and others injured. We got reactions there from two ministers in Cameroon, and also reactions from some of the victims who are calling on government to help relocate them to suitable sites in the nation's capital, Yaoundé. Dr. Michael Ndimancho, let's come back to what happened in Yaoundé. Who is tempting nature?
Well, issues of natural disaster, which of course I would like to first of all start by that natural disaster is a happening that is independent of human making. It is not anything that started today, and it's not something that is only meant for Cameroon. We have natural disasters all over the world. Either it could be earthquake, it could be a tornado, it could be a landslide like what happened in Yaoundé, it could be floods, it could be even drought, and tornadoes in that sense. So, and I think that when natural disasters happen, the consequences are usually, be it on livestock, on the environment, or on humans. We expect that. As I said, it is independent of human making. But that said, the fact that it is independent of human making doesn't mean that humans cannot protect themselves, or doesn't mean that the population can be protected in some cases. There are some cases whereby we are supposed to know people who have real protection, civil protection, in countries where the citizens are protected, and studies are being made about some of these areas that are having the tendencies of these natural happenings, are having constant studies, and populations are constantly informed about what is happening. Like what happened in Yaoundé, I think that the authorities in this case they couldn't stop it, but they could protect the population, because this was, foreseen. This could be foreseen, and it was foreseen. It is just that some people decided not to take any action about what is happening. You understand that in some cases, because most often we will say, why did the people build it? Why were they there? Because this is also some of the blame games that some of our ministers are given and some local authorities are giving, and say that people are building those kind of places. But you should know that in some cases, some people are helpless
and they could only hang on those kind of places, or they are like drowning and they hang on that kind of a snake. So, but what is interested now, it has happened, but what is really interesting now to note is the way, when a natural disaster happens, the way it is handled. Because we cannot more stop what has happened. Over 30 people have died. But then, what irked me the most was the way it was handled. We see these things happen in the world. You know that when natural disaster happen, it is a rescue program is a whole program on its own. We have what we call the immediate aid or an immediate rescue, and then we have what we call the long-term rescue of every disaster. It is none in the world. And secondly, what I want to say is that it is not only incumbent on the government when it comes to rescue situations. It is on NGOs, on population, generally populations of a country. That is incumbent on them. Because we have the tendency now to say government as it was happening. This is an issue that when it happened, it is like a tsunami, whereby there are people who are even, there are NGOs who are specialized only on issues of natural disaster and who are supposed to come to the aid of these people. But then what I realized is that when it happens in Yaoundé, there are procedures that are supposed to be followed that were not followed. Because when we talk about rescue procedures, and I talk about the immediate, it means that when this kind of thing happen, you know, we have psychosocial workers that are supposed to be on the ground. We have immediate relief workers that are supposed to be. And when we talk about relief, you don't relieve somebody without giving somebody who has lost a harbor, and then you are not able to give that person an immediate harbor. In some countries, we have people who are resettled immediately. Mind you, there are people there who have lost their families, like a man who has lost the wife, lost children, and lost relatives. Now, psychosocial, the first thing is to take care of the trauma that man is going through that at that particular moment. And for you to efficiently take care of that trauma and that psychological turbulence that is going on in that person at that particular moment, is for you to get a comfortable place, a shelter for that person at that particular moment before you start thinking about what is happening. But what I realize is people making one-man show, carrying cameras and standing there, others bringing mattresses as an immediate mattresses will come when you have already gotten a relief, a harbor for that person who has actually gone through this kind of a trauma. So I think to say that it is like a curse or that the gods have turned it back on Cameroonian, it is not. These are natural happenings that we have to preempt. Preempt doesn't mean that we cannot stop it. Preempt means that we can protect the civilians through studies, through foreseeing about what is going to. Because when that place was there, everybody was seeing and nobody was taking any action. Like you say, something was to be done by everybody, and someone thought that somebody would do it, and no one finally did it. And this is what we had.
We're talking about living in risk zones in Cameroon, not only in Cameroon. Across the world, we find persons living in such areas. Douala is not an exception. Edea, Limbe is not an exception. We've seen cases in Limbe where lives were equally claimed. Why do we continue living in these zones earmarked as risk zones?
They say,
are we that helpless, like he says? That
there is this adage that says, if the preferable is not available, you work with the available to become the preferable.
Okay.
And that is also the situation where you look at the theory of relativism, where it's a theory which is established, in which it postulates that you can assume anything and it becomes what you think it is. The question you've asked is that, are we helpless based on the situation where people build along risky environment? It is a two-way street and two-way responsibility. The responsibility goes first with administrative authorities who are charged with the protection of lives and properties. The protection of lives and properties is not just bound during war, and it's also bound during social and environmental issues, because when we talk about violence, we are looking at structural violence and cultural violence, and so most often government focus themselves on direct violence to want to do rescue operation. And I think that we have to go beyond looking at just the direct violence, and sometimes the municipality need to take ownership, because if you take ownership of your municipality, you cannot, as Dr. Ndimancho said, you cannot stop natural disaster from happening, but there are some effort that you can reduce, you can take to reduce some of the casualties or some of the effect of the disaster around your municipality. Let me take, for example, let's start with Limbe. You look at, when you go to Limbe, look at some of the position of the houses. I must say it is very disastrous, taking into two account, first, that we are in an active volcanic environment, and if in any case we have a volcanic eruption with huge tremor, what will happen with most of those houses on the hills? They will slide down. The second thing is the soil where those houses are is located in what we call the seaward, like the seaward that we use in mud rainy season. It's been dug there. In geology, we call it in pumice. We call it in geology pumice, this reddish thing that they put on the road. Now, if you look at the solidity of the material, it's not that solid because the upper layer is solid, but the lower layer is not solid because the volcanic, you know, Mount Cameroon is sometimes produces acid volcano and basaltic volcano. So when you see this seawater being produced, like when you are going to Njombe, you see they extract the seawater there. It's an indication that this area has been along the Cameroon volcanic line. And now, what our people do is that they go to these areas. I'm talking about Limbe. They go to these areas. Once they build their houses on the topper soil, they feel that the topper soil is protected. But right beneath the topper soil, Mr. Liu, is made up of ash. This ash that we use in our roads, in putting our roads. And now, when it happens, when there's a tremor, the ash shrinks and your house slides. And that's why when there's heavy rain, you will see that in Limbe, most of those houses washed off because the seawater actually washed off. That's the first issue. Now, the question there is, why, despite this risk factor, why is it that people are still building? The first thing is education. These municipalities have to invest more in education. When I talk about education, I'm talking about environmental education. As to the risks of people not building in those localities, I'll bet you that if you do a survey, you will realize that about 20 or 30% of people who build in those localities are actually not informed about some of the dangers, in fact, about the soil in which they are. There is no problem in building in some localities, but the problem is using the right material. Because if you are not educated to know the resources, the structure of those areas, you don't know the nature of material to use. That's the first aspect. Now, the second aspect now falls also on the burden of the individuals. The burden of the families, sometimes often goes in some of these localities. To build their houses, actually don't consult authorities. And I want to tell you that political factors play here. The political factors is that if the municipality says they should do their job, oftentimes we have seen where municipalities go to do their job, and we see the landowner himself bribing the authority and saying, no, please, you know, don't destroy. And sometimes it's a two-way street. So when you look at such a situation, the question you ask yourself is, do we really love ourselves first as citizens? Because every citizen has a responsibility. It's not just the government responsibility. You also have that inherent responsibility of ensuring your safety. Come now to the reaction of what happened in Buea, the flood. I want to take you now to Buea. You look at all the water roads in Buea has been blocked. People are constructing. Yes, sold out. People are constructing. Let me take you first to Koke, where you had that incident. You see Koke, there was a mainstream leaving the mountain, walking towards Koke. That's why you see the water reservoir was built in, where you go to Central Market, there was a reservoir there, Bitingi. The water reservoir that supplied down Moya, My 16 and the rest. But you know, people have built their houses around the catchment of the mountain. They have actually blocked it. You go to Moya, there's an area where CDC is to operate, which is known as Bangawata. That area, it has been blocked. You go to another part in Moya, there's where we call Koke, which was the path that water leaves from the mountain right down. It has been blocked. And these persons, the good thing is they have their building permit from municipal authorities. They have their building permit. How did they build? Who did the survey? How was the survey conducted? Who actually ensured that the planning or the geological aspect of the city has been respected or was respected? And that's why you saw what happened in Buea. And it will keep happening because people keep blocking. They forget the fact that Buea is on a slope. So it's that slope, when rain falls, it washes down, and you cannot actually deter water from moving down. Water does not have a particular trajectory. Go to Ndongo. Let's go to Ndongo. Those who are familiar with Moliku, go to that area in Ndongo. It has been, people are building their houses, blocking the catchment, blocking the areas. And now the question now is, who gives them building permits? How were these land survey? Who had the land certificate or land title? Now let's come now to the reaction in which happened in Mbankolo. A similar situation is also in Bamenda. Bamenda is not left out. And some other areas like in Bafoussam, these areas are not left out. But let's come to how government reaction to natural disaster. First, I want to say let's applaud the initiative put in by the government in Mbankolo. However, we know much should have been done, because if you listen to the speeches of the ministers, you see that one was talking more about the aspect that a projection was done that there will be rain in the days ahead, so people should be careful and the rest. But however, I think that there is also that need where we must also look at what can be done to save these people immediately after this disaster. Nobody was in charge of the disaster. Nobody could actually say stop the disaster. But when it happened like that, the first aspect we were expecting is that a head count as to all those people in that area. I can tell you that we have not had that data, the statistics. How many people were living in that neighborhood at the moment? How many people were living in that neighborhood first? Now, the number of women, of children affected by this situation, and so what has been done to put them here, and so what is being done in the next ahead. These are issues that is, when it's well coordinated, it helps now support from abroad to come or support from within to come. And I want to say that there's also something that we have missed as far as Mbankolo is concerned. The people of Mbankolo must understand that their role is also to collaborate with the government, those who are living in this high-risk area. Because if a municipal councillor comes and tell you that this is your house you are building in this area, it's in a high-risk area, most of them sometimes say, let me just build here. It's not when the government comes, they'll scatter it. It happens in Douala, where we see people building in Marrakesh, in areas where they will say, aujourd'hui que le gouvernement doit venir, c'est aujourd'hui. And you keep living that aujourd'hui until you have an incident. Then you realize that there was also an incident. However, I also think that we as an institution, or the Republican institution, must also start looking at what needs to be done in such a way that if municipalities don't take their ownership, why can now the central government not have a task force that look at key areas? We have geological, we have year in, year out. The University of Buea has the geology department. All these areas have geology department.
Yeah, but Dr. Ndimancho, we listened to an expert who says that many persons intending to construct houses would not solicit the services of experts, and would also not even hearken to advice coming from their departments doing what they just want to do. And amongst those living in such areas are intellectuals themselves. And Tah Mai Jarvis is asking whether people don't love themselves.
Especially in town settings, Mr. Leo, I really think that you should expect this kind of a situation.
Look at some of the neighborhoods in Douala.
I was looking at, since you talk about Douala, I will quote an example that may not really be an example where we are afraid of natural disaster, but we're afraid of some disasters that could happen, I mean, man-made. Look at the place at the airport in Douala, where it is a zone where people are not supposed to construct. You allow people construct in that place for how many years today? People are constructing and you are just watching. You see people construct 3, 4, 5 stories in that particular place at an airport, and everybody, even I don't need to be told about a risk of constructing a high building at the point like the airport, and somebody is supposed to be in charge of this and they are just watching. And now you see, when it happens, everybody now comes to make speeches. It means that what? We become more defensive than offensive in our responsibility. This is what is happening. Let's even just forget about the natural disaster that happened that we do not even know about what is that. But what about those things that we ourselves we could be able to preempt? What about those things that we ourselves could be able to protect? The point is that I've generally noticed that in Africa, most governments are interested in consolidating political powers than taking care of the citizens. Because how do you explain? Look at, you go to places like in Marrakech, like places like Mesoke, and all of those places I name, you find people building story buildings inside mud. And people are just watching. Nobody is saying anything. So I really think that it is an issue of the government having the people at heart. Because when you look at even those who, and Tah Mai Jarvis talk about building those places where are supposed to be danger zones, but the people are having title deeds. And then you ask yourself, where did they have these title deeds from? Because when they come to break, or when something happens now, you find people brandishing their title deeds. Who issued the title deeds?
Who issued the building permit?
I mean, and the council is supposed to, I mean, the building permits we have, the cadastre, the service of the cadastre, all about, meaning that before you are issued that, somebody has come and studied, and they have seen that it is fit for you to build, and to build a particular house. But you find that what is happening in the quarters is, people go around, the council sends people around, and you find they put this cross, this red cross on two houses. Anybody who can pay immediately, because I've seen a neighbor do, you pay, and I mean, they get off it. It is not their problem. Their problem is to work the money they are working in the field. It's not to protect the citizen per se. So that's what we are saying, that there is this issue of having the interest of the citizen at heart. And we have seen that most governments have tilted their attention to the consolidation of power rather than the protection of the citizen. Because it is easy to ask, like you have asked, who issued this land title to this place? Because when it happens like that, nobody go into that investigation because it's a cabal. Because if you want to start digging, you see that you reach the highest person of there.
Are we not also in a situation where neither the population or the municipal authorities think about the future? Like Tah says that people say, okay, let me just construct here for now. Whenever the government comes, okay, my house may be destroyed and I might have lived there for some time. And then the municipal authority says, okay, I'll be there for 5-10 years. Exactly. Let me grab as much as I can. When it will be time for them to be, I will no longer be there. Nobody thinks about the long term.
That is not exactly what we are talking about, that there is that issue of selfish interests of each and every individual. But who are you to blame here? Who is structured and who is utterly habilitated, who has the powers to be able to act at that particular time? It is the municipal authority. It is not that citizen who says, let me just build here, and then when the time comes, I don't really think that any citizen is thinking about that. Every citizen's prayer is even that the government will never ever do anything in this particular place. No citizen even builds, because when you look at the kind of buildings that people put at particular places, and then you are asking yourself, you do not know when the government is going to start acting here, but you put up that kind of a building that maybe you will start having a gains of that building in 3, 4, 5, 6 years, when you do not know when the government is going to start destroying or destruction on that particular spot. So I really think that when it comes to issues like this, we look at a structured structure. And the structure here is the government. It is the government who is supposed to take the blame, because every town has a planning. And the citizens do not know about the planning of the town. It is the government with its habilitated department that know about the planning of the town, and knowing that they are supposed to build here, they are not supposed to build here. Because it even creates even more harm when citizens settle in a place and the government comes to destroy. What happened? Because in most cases, even in destroying, because the law even says that when you settle in the place to a number of years, yes. I mean, you know that you are not just supposed to rehabilitate the person before.
Doctor, you want a government to act. But we know that if government sets in today to say you guys should leave, like what's happening at the airport, because certainly they're preempting what may happen in the next 20, 30 years, we are the same persons who cry foul. Look at the neighborhood like, I'm sure they call it Buea. Look at where we are. Everybody knows that there is going to be that time where they are going to be asked out of it, but we are constructing them. How do we explain this? Because once government sets in today, you want government to do its job. People are going to cry foul. We listen to this lady in Yaoundé who says, we are waiting for government to relocate us to a better site, which means that they are aware that where they are living
was not.
Yeah.
See, why I'm laughing, because there's another incident which is a calamity bound to happen. In Bangladesh, towards, I think when you are descending, there's a hill somewhere, an abandoned house, but some people are still staying there. You see, there's this high risk that that story building will collapse. The nearest future, but some people are still staying there.
The owner has
abandoned the land, but people are staying there. And you see, these are landed people staying there. Now, if it happens, should we go and blame the government? Of course, no. Now, the issue here is that we as individuals, sometimes we don't love ourselves. I'll say it. Because we have a tendency of there's this concept that we always use, which is the concept where we say people are entitled. The entitlement syndrome has eaten deep into the fabric of most of us in such a way that we feel that we are entitled to anything that happens to us. It is the government. I want to say that yes, the government has its own shared responsibility, but what I would differ is that you, the individual, must first of all think about the life of your own family, because you are the president of your life before you have the president of the nation that takes care of you, before you have the government that is there for your welfare. I want to give you this example again. When you go to Bonaberi, there are areas where we know that these areas is a swampy area, like in Mabanda. Swamp, but you see people tell you that no, these areas you can go and build your house there, will fill it, will landfill it. Then I ask the situation, when it rains now, what happened? You have floods. We have had a lot of floods in Douala, and people will tell you, no, you see, the government has not taken care of the flood victims. But didn't you know that that area is not good? And I always ask this question, must everybody live in Douala? Must everybody build in some particular areas? Because it's normal that you must look for a safe environment. And secondly, now I want to come now to the aspect of education. We have state universities and private universities. These state universities and private universities have the geography department. Some have the geology department. These geology departments are departments charged with studying the land, the minerals, the topography, and predicting the happenings of natural disaster. In my little geology, which I did in high school, I know that we have, like in Buea, we have the seismic station. The seismic station, which was stationed in Ewane, because they put it in Ewane to easily monitor the volcanic activity along the Camel volcanic line. Now, this seismic station is charged to ensure that they can predict a possible eruption in the days ahead or in any time. That's why there was a time when we were told by the seismic station that we should brace up for a possible eruption. That was last year or 2 years ago. And it did not happen. I don't know why. Now, you look at the situation. What do we do in our schools these days? What are the defenses that are being done by those who are doing geology, geography in all the schools? In other countries, you see that most researchers research on possibility of natural disaster. But I will bet you that most of the research, oftentimes, that most of these our higher institutions do, sometimes is not case study within Cameroon. And sometimes they don't even know the topography in which some of these people are building. I just cited an example in Limbe. I have not seen a dissertation talk about the danger or the accumulation of the soil content in which in Limbe, and why people should not build in those hills. I've not seen it. Maybe it exists, but I've not seen it. Another aspect that Dr. Ndimancho said, which I will agree with him, is the aspect of transparency. Every city, every municipality has a town planning, but it has become a top secret to so few, where people don't know the town planning of this area. What stops you in publishing it, in saying that, okay, this is, make it a public information? I will bet you that there are two possibilities here. Either those who live in these areas actually bribe their way to have their land title and to have their land survey, or those who came and surveyed them were incompetent and don't know what they were doing and were recruited in an incompetent basis. I don't know whether Dr. Michael Ndimancho, that could be the possibility. There are two things. Because either those who came to survey were bribed, and they gave land titles and they gave building permit, or they are not competent enough to do the job and just came and issue without doing the study. Because in each of these departments, you have technocrats and specialists who actually go to the field, get the soil, because one of the principal reasons of survey is that they get the soil sample. Then from the soil sample now, they tell you whether or not this can be done. Now also the site plan of a neighborhood is built based on the soil sample. All neighborhood has soil sample. That's why there are areas that will tell you you cannot build above 4 stories. You cannot build above 2 stories. You cannot build this nature. You cannot build, because they know that the topography in which it stands. But we see situation like I asked the question: who did the survey? Who did the land title? So there are 2 possibilities: either they were bribed, or the people who went there didn't know what they were doing. Okay. And so, conclusively, before you take a mic, if the government, what happened in Mbankolo now, if the government now say, okay, after this humanitarian effort, they investigate, who are those who have survey, who are those who have land title or building permit, they come on, who issued them? The moment penalty is done on those who issued some of those building permit, I tell you, people will start sitting up.
Please know that most landslides and erosions in the tropics like ours is linked to deforestation. The trees and vegetation have roots that have adapted to protect the soil on which they grow. We cut down everything, thus exposing the soil, which can easily be eroded. Note that most of the issues on our coast in Kribi and Limbe are linked to the destruction of the mangroves that are especially adapted to protect the coast from tides. Dr. Hansen Langmia writing there. Good evening to you, Doctor, and glad to read from you. Good evening, Mr. Liu. If you can see what is happening with us here in this country is being caused by the big men we have, because many of this land that we build on is being owned by them. This is Gaston writing from Edinao. Good evening to you, Gaston. Good evening. It's Melanie Tumba writing from Kumba. I think Cameroon has to look at alternative building technology, which is resistant to flood. We once again are going to take a listen to the situational report on what happened in Mbankolo through the voice of Buea.
As officials proceed with preventive destruction of houses in Mbankolo, survivors and those displaced by the incident have taken up temporary residence in Komkona. The humanitarian crisis caused by the landslide has affected the ability of children to go back to school, rendering many families homeless.
What happened was truly a disaster. Although when it happened, it's my mother that discovered it and asked us to run.
We are not used to this kind of life. We hope this ends soon. We want the government to look for a suitable place for us. At the Yaoundé Central Hospital, some injured survivors are recovering, with doctors indicating that many will be discharged in the days ahead.
Nous avons fait le tour et nous constatons que les blessés sont très bien encadrés, bien suivis, et que d'après ce que le docteur...
We have noticed that the injured are well taken care of. Some will be discharged in few days. As you know, the head of state has addressed his condolences to the bereaved families. He has wished the injured a quick recovery and has asked us to take care of them and accompany the survivors in every way possible.
Et il nous a chargé d'assurer l'encadrement des blessés et d'accompagner matériellement, financièrement et psychologiquement ceux qui sont les victimes de ce drame.
Faced with this scenario, architects have been sensitizing the population to respect construction norms.
You know, we know the laws, but we always want to cut corners. Even the person wanting to build his house, instead of coming to see a professional, will go and look for a technician that is not qualified because they want to build at a low cost. And consequently, we have what we're experiencing all over the place. People build where they are not supposed to build. People build in swampy areas. People build without respecting norms. The quality of materials are not respected. You know, people build and nothing is being done even in areas that are where they are not to build. And there's a lot of anarchy. It's rather unfortunate concerning the construction sector in the country.
Government officials on ground say if the population followed instructions, this disaster would have been prevented.
Il y a l'eau, le feu et le vent. Donc si vous êtes installé sur l'axe d'évacuation ou d'écoulement naturel de l'eau, lorsque l'eau voudra passer, l'eau va passer.
There are three things we cannot stop: water, the wind, and fire. So if you've constructed near a gutter, you have to be careful. It is difficult to stop water. We released lots of press statements 1 month ago to indicate that the weather will not be good. We announced that we will have torrential rainfall. We alerted mayors and the public to leave risky zones.
Les populations qui sont installées sur des zones non édificantes disent qu'ils libèrent ces zones-là pour que les eaux trouvent leur chemin. Et ça, c'est sur l'ensemble du territoire.
Councils and people of goodwill have been showing up with support to survivors. Many of them were already settled, but are now obliged to restart life from zero following the unfortunate disaster.
Bo Elvis reporting there from Yaoundé, the nation's capital. We are now being told that some houses have been destroyed around the area. Dr. Michael Ndimancho, a great move by the government. And can we also say that a house can be constructed in Douala or Yaoundé or Bafoussam without the knowledge of municipal authorities? Is that possible?
Not at all, not at all. And that's why I talk about the complicity of the local authorities to all of these, to this disorder. Because you will not construct a house, especially like in Douala, in major towns, without the knowledge of these local authorities. And this is where we are supposed to start, because sometimes we have the tendency to blame it is true that every citizen, like Tah Mai Jarvis said, every citizen has the right to protect. You have, first of all, you have to ensure your own protection and protection of your family. But sometimes you are like Heblet. You see, I've had some, I mean, forgive me to say that most of these Francophones who have come from maybe from the West, you hear somebody say, and when you talk about where the Vichy is, you get into the Marrakech, in a swampy area. It's the issue of competition, where people want to sit and say, I'm in my house. I mean, you know, and they ignore the consequences that go with living in your house. They don't care about trying to, secure, live in a secure area. And saying that the government is now, trying to put some order. And that's what I said. Sometimes our government is always at the defensive. There is even another communique today from the Geo Fundi about the area in Goso at Eba, where the Geo is today, because of the incident, the Geo has come out with a communique to say that all those who are living at that particular point at Ebam should leave the place because it's a dangerous place. And he says the law enforcement will come and bring. I think that they are supposed to be offensive in issues like this. And this is what it's supposed to be. Must things happen like this before we think that we have to, take an action? Tah Mai Jarvis also want to talk about the geological department, or I also want to quote an example of the meteorological department that we have in Douala and Bonanjo, whereby sometimes we are surprised by the rains. Can you imagine this? Heavy rains, and everybody is surprised, and even the meteorological department is the first to be surprised about the rains that is falling in Douala, so torrentially. And then we begin to ask ourselves, that, what are those departments for? What are those offices for? Why are they not using? That is the thing. Why they're not communicating, and that is the issue. We have the land tenure office. What we call the cadastre and all of those, where they are supposed to give us information on where to build. But you imagine that to get an information on where the land where you have to build, the land that you are supposed to use and not to use, maybe you have to pay for them to give the information they are supposed to give the Cameroonian by right. They are supposed to publish that information. I think that because there is what we call in Douala the new layout. You hear information comes that there's new layout here, and everybody rushes there. The new layout, and everybody rushes there. And you find that there's a local chief now who is Sada. And who put that local chief? It is the government authority that installs that local chief. And that local chief now start, the liaising out land and all of those things, and people are coming. And so you see the kind of disorder that we find ourselves in some of these things. We even talk about what? especially when you have heavyweight people, I mean, people who matter in government, who go to those kind of places, nobody talks. We even look at it, see the construction of roads. You see, sometimes you construct roads and you find you reach at a certain moment, the roads bend where you're not supposed to bend. It's because a big man has constructed it. So I think that we need an overhaul. There's a place like Aqua North where the route was supposed to enlarge, but it was said it wasn't enlarged because it's the place of the former government delegate. I mean, where he has been prevented that the route, because the people, the indigenes, are living there, and they have refused vehemently that they cannot touch the borders of that road to enlarge it. So you find that there is this disorder that is being installed, and that people know the right thing to do, but because the life of individuals do not matter, people do not only care less, but they are careless about what is happening.
They are careless about go with responsibilities. Persons have lost their lives in Limbe, the chief town of Fako division of Fako division out there in the southwest region. We have seen people lost their lives in Douala, in Bamenda, and also in Yaoundé recently. How do we pay for those who have lost their lives because of the irresponsibilities of municipal and administrative authorities who issued permits for people to live in such areas? They failed in their responsibilities because by issuing a permit, they think that they've chopped the money and may not be in power when it happens. Isn't it time for persons to be brought to book to answer for their irresponsibilities?
Yeah, that's why I was saying that there are two things that if you see it happens like that, either the administrative authority or the municipal councillor was bribed or he was incompetent. Now, looking at the two, regardless of the two, somebody has to go in for. Because if you had received bribe and you allow it, you have to go in for. But if it's discovered that you were incompetent and you gave a false, we have to go in for because we recruited you. I want to say that the day we shall start punishing people based on this issue of land allocation and also illegal building permit or illegal building permit. When I say legal building permit, is that building permit that is given legally, but on the reality of the guy, it's illegal. Now, if you see what happened in Mbankolo, it's the first thing that the government, Mbankolo, what the government has to do is that after you must have settled these people and carry out the relief activity, the thing that you have to do is that you have to set a commission of inquiry. The commission of inquiry need to be based on one, how many persons in that locality had building permit? Two, who issued the building permit in this locality? Three, what is the state policy in terms of building in that environment? Four, where did these people who surveyed the land? Now, if you can actually trace this, and you see that, okay, so and so person have building permit, so and so person gave the building permit, so and so person surveyed the land, you now move to the surveyor. The certificate obtained, where did the surveyor obtain the certificate? To know that, okay, if it is either bribe or not. Now, once all this information are established, punishment and people are now taken to court formally, other areas will sit up. Other municipal personalities will sit up and say, but I don't want, you may give me your money, but I will not sign your document, that is not me. So it start making people now to be aware that, but why would I give you money and you don't sign my document? So better I don't give you. So it start raising this awareness and reducing some of the difficulties. Look like example, I'll go to game here from Koto. When you go to towards this area in Baobambange, there are some steepy areas there. People have constructed there, and the soil composition is not compact.
It's very loose.
It's very loose. We're in a sandy area in Douala. Most of the soil is sandy. Now, in case we have such a scenario, we'll run with relief material, but these people have building permits, possible land titles. Who also issued the land title? Because before you issue a land title, there must have been a survey in that area. There must have been a state policy. The state has a policy as to the nature and houses or the composition of the soil in that locality. I agree with you that the one of the ways to reduce some of this disaster is when people are punished after the disaster. And when people are punished after the disaster, I'm talking about the municipal authorities. Because if the municipal authorities are taken to court and are actually sued based on what happened, I bet you, Mr. Leo, you will see that people will sit up. Give another example. Look at what happened
in Limbe. And look at what also happened in Buea when water came down from the mountain and it carried a lot of disaster. That was when the mayor had to sit up and say, okay, we are going to do this, we are going to demolish houses that are blocked. But I'll bet you cannot build anywhere in Buea. Within as you start the foundation, the next day they will possibly come and draw the X in the plans that you have pegged. Stop work. Seek council. Seek council is good. The reason why they say seek council, to me, in my own interpretation, is that come and know whether where you are building is you are supposed to build there or not, or whether the structure you are supposed to build is supposed to take into consideration. But no, the seek council is financial. Okay. Now, once that is established, a situation like that happen, what next? So I think that there is a need where people have to be sued. And also I want to call on NGOs of goodwill and lawyers. Cameroon government gives, the constitution gives the provision where you can sue somebody for negligence when general interest is at stake. And that's why we, in other countries like Nigeria, Ghana, you see lawyers of great reputation who come when incident like this happen, go and meet those who have this building permit and now sue those who actually gave the building permit. And then you see now these people sit up. I think we must love this country. Okay. And for us to love this country, the individuals also have to have its own shared responsibility.
We are moving over to Buea, Southwest Regional Capital, to assess where we are with since the occurrence of the landslide that took also some lives in that part of the country through the microphone of Emmanuel C.
We had a flood here on the 18th of March, which was really, really serious. We lost people. People were carried by water. They picked them about 500 meters away from here. Some are still alive. Like my neighbor behind here is still alive. Thank God for that. You see the destruction the water did. I cannot really tell. It was more than above. Because you see all this wall, water was full here. Look at this level. If you go outside, you even see how the mud, the inside, the mud is still there. All my walls behind were breaking. So my crates, beer, went off. My car, which was parked beside them, it was taken away. It's only the caterpillar which came and drew it. And up to now, the car is unable to move normally. So for now, we are just like that managing. The day you have 4,000 or 5,000, you buy a bag of cement, you manage to make some blocks while waiting what you can do next. I'm trying to do some maintenance. As I told you the day I have a bag of cement, they mold me like 20 blocks, 30 blocks. While waiting, then I will put back the structure. You see, first of all, the council came and opened the culvert, so water should run freely. And we were called sometimes, they will give you some small support from the president, ministers, and so forth. So if you lose 10 fingers, I give you 1 finger, you say, thank you, God.
Mr. Self, I be IDP for inside Buea. I come on a kata for Mioka. All them, any man do scatter. So when they don't go a wonder, my sister will be stay for 1 compound with my small massa. My sister don't go back for a kata. Because the kind of picking the go school, but I don't for straight, don't go back for a kata. That other girl don't go na small support with some na help, true help for people. When they don't assist you go rent house with small support. Then the other ones don't go back for Yaoundé, they be happy because documents so they go all. So they be assisting for sending go back for Yaoundé. So one don't go back for Bamenda. My sister, easy. Easy. Like yesterday, because I did for yesterday, I managing my time. Sometimes I did for roads here the whole day. I'm not saving 1,000. Yeah, yesterday, so they drink nagari with sugar, they sleep. Same the job manager, so they sleep. So easy too for me. Easy too for me.
Now, I worked on me for you. I pen, I feel the pen and G. Classic. Now the day the flood don't come down, I know they for around. I don't leave my door lock. I don't go up for some quarters for Bokwango. Now I don't manage much maintenance. Work go for council. And I go 3 times. 2 weeks, 1 month I don't go. Now small thing. The mayor don't give me. Don't go meet up my big sister, my big brother, a woman, he don't give me more room. And for that, so before me, I want to go back now, man. All thing, I don't lost my ID card, all thing. I don't fit travel now. All thing from standing for. Because now I want to do the different thing now. We have to go back for your water.
Okay, those are some of the victims of the floods that took some lives months back in Buea, chieftain of the Southwest region. Dr. Michael Ndimancho, what is your reading of how victims of situations like this are generally treated in Cameroon? Because from some months from now, we are also going to be talking to some of the victims of the Mbankolo landslide.
Well, it's a pity that in incidents like this, some people take an advantage of it. You know, like what happens in Bankumo that is still fresh. Mbankolo. You know, Mbankolo. You know, one of the things I've decried so much since it happened is the fact that politicians are using that for their prowess. You know, you come, carry journalists, you come. Everybody wants to identify that he went there, and it's not really because they really want to go to the scene and sympathize, bring solution. No, it is because they want to show as the part of their political activism that they were there. And then they come there with journalists, with cameras, I mean, they film them, and then on social media, it is all there. And once they leave there, it is all. It is completely all. Their ambition has, or their objectives has been achieved, that they were on the scene of the incident. And that is just all. So, talking about the treatment of these people, I think that our own people are being treated very badly, because if you ask yourself what many of these people have brought there, you will not find anything really tangible that can sustain those who have actually lost their families, lost their homes. I mean, we thought that they should be even open up like a national solidarity fund. You know, political parties, it is also their objective that you could say, okay, of this political party, we have decided to open a fund for these people so that we to resettle them. You know, the political party, they are the eye of the government. Sometimes they make the government sit straight on the things that they were not doing. So, but what we have seen is that it's just a kind of one-man show, which is not supposed to be there like that. It is a pity. And we really think that sometimes I blame these people, and sometimes I do not, because you do not know, because there's what we call the push and the pull factor in these areas. Sometimes most of these people are put. You heard that lady. She said she ran away from, Qatar from the war, and she came to settle there. I mean, meaning that what? There is that push factor, which is the war. I mean, and now what is happening? She came and she found that is where she could settle, and that is the only place. In that case, she is helpless. She was helpless, and that was the only harbor she had. But then I really think that it should be something sustainable, and that is why I said, when a disaster happened, like it happened in Mbankolo, and as it happened in Buea, I really think that the government should have some sustainable way of taking care of these people, because the immediate care should be that, okay, they should settle the people, let them have a harbor, let them have home, let them have where to sleep. Now, what do they think about them in the long run? Yes, are they going to resettle them? Because one of the fundamental rights of a human being, or a citizen, is that you have a right to live in your own country. But the question is, where are you supposed to live in your own country? Given the fact that we have the freedom to live wherever any town that we want. But then, I think it is a government responsibility to help these people to live well, to settle well. It is very important, because leaving the responsibility solely on the population. We know in Cameroon whereby people live for less than $1 a day. Meaning that what? The people are helpless. Meaning that they find any place, they just want to live there. We find people in the street who are even living in the street. It is not because they want to live in the street, it is because they are helpless. And therefore, we think that it is a function of that particular department, a civil protection department, to be able to make sure that these people do not live in these kinds of zones. Now, we also talk about the issue of town planning. I ask myself, are Cameroonians towns planned? Because I want to take for an example. Look at the route leaving from the west, southwest, down to Douala. And people ask, why is there so much traffic when you leave maybe Bonaberi and you are coming down to town, to Aqua? And I told somebody, it is because of poor planning. It is because we have one route in and the same route out.
Even the one we are blocking out broke.
That is a town is not planned like that. Meaning that what? There was a route where when you come in and you go back through another route, will not have this traffic. Or if you had another route where those who are going over to Yaoundé go through that route to Yaoundé, will not have this traffic. I ask myself, are there not people who are trained for some of these things, or we just do things by mistake? Now, you see, look at what the government is going and spending to take care, maybe those mattresses and all. That is money being spent that maybe that money could be reasonably spent on helping those citizens to live well and maybe settle them in some of those areas and that way. And when you look at those places, that was a village in Mbankolo. And one of the things is government services, government private services, which is important, that sometimes determine whether the village is a structured village where services should go there, services like electricity and water. When you have a place like that, because I usually think that electricity should after be installed and officially installed in that kind of a place which is structured where the government has accepted that it is habitable. Okay. If it is not habitable, why should you bring those services to the people? Okay. Because this is where some of those errors that we are making.
Okay, it gets back to the issue of the responsibility we are talking about. Who takes a responsibility for the deaths that we are recording in such areas? Because, like you say, these areas are also under the jurisdiction of municipal and administrative authorities. Good evening, Mr. Leo. I'm happy getting you guys from this studio. I'm so much happy for the news you guys are passing through. Some of us will really learn lessons in this program. It's Mr. George writing from Bamenda. Now, we're talking about natural disasters in Cameroon and the response that is given to them by either the government or civil society. How do you appreciate the response by the population, the general population, towards what happened in Buea and in Yaoundé? We saw what happened in, I'm sure it's Ngwashi, in Bafusa.
Yes,
persons also died. What is the general response from the population, especially non-governmental organizations who have been operating in our nation? Because we are looking at long-term follow-up of victims. Now, we just listened to some of the victims in Buea who are now telling their stories some months from now. We also are going to be talking to the guys in Mbankolo. But we have NGOs that are existing in Cameroon. Why don't we see them also very much interested in domains like this?
If you can remember very well, there was a time on your program where I talked about the fact that most of our NGOs have not become active. They have become more of political and looking for money. Because I think we don't see NGOs when it comes to election periods. Even when it comes to election period, the only time we get to see them is when they are fighting for accreditation. After that, they go solo. Look at what happened in Ngwashi. I was just about to go there. Luckily, you raised it up. We had people who died. All cameras were there.
What's happening today?
Today, what next? You asked, even no committee was formed, no follow-up, no NGO has taken us back to say, okay, 5 years on, 2 years on, this is the situation of the people of Ngwashi. That aside, you look at also the issue what happened in Buea in March. That flood happened in March where some people were killed and also a good number of homes and properties were destroyed. Cameras were taken again to Buea. Interviews were conducted. 3 months after that, what next? You listen to the interview yourself.
Waiting for the next
yeah, the people were saying we just had support just that time, and after that, what next? And you hear the father is saying that he wants to construct in that same locality, in that same area, pointing the same area which we know that has a road for water. What next? Now, you see, our NGOs have now become more focused on wars. That's why you see, even in the situation of war, they are taken advantage of. They take advantage of the suffering of the people. Look at the Anglophone crisis, how the NGOs' reaction in the Anglophone crisis. They only come when certain massacres have been committed. Then they come and sing the song. But what are they doing to inform the people about possibilities of de-escalating the conflict? Come to the issue of what we are talking about. In few months, we'll be back in Mbankolo. What next? I think that NGOs have the responsibility of education, survey, and also start raising alarm. How many of these NGOs have actually had a press conference to say that, okay, this is research we have carried out in terms of these people living in this locality.
We had this number of victims in Washi. This is where they are.
How many? Zero. Zero. But you see, they'll rush now to Mbankolo. Just wait. In the days ahead, they'll rush to Mbankolo. After that, nothing. I believe, and I strongly believe, that it is the responsibility of non-governmental organizations to raise an alarm to government that something is happening somewhere that we think that you should do. And this doesn't only limit ourselves to the issue of saying that government has stopped freedom of speech. This doesn't only limit the aspect to say that government has stopped a political party from campaigning. This is not only limited to political fight, societal fight. How many of these NGOs have carried out a survey and said people in the particular localities don't have electricity? How many of these NGOs have carried out a survey to say people in this particular area are living in risk areas, and so therefore we urge them to leave? None. But when disaster strikes, they come in. I want to tell you that we have reached a point in our history in this nation where our NGOs need to take a reflection on education. Because I keep saying that voters' education is lacking in this country. And it is a responsibility not of the government alone, but the NGOs. I also keep saying that we are talking about environmental issues. How many of these NGOs actually have done research? Because before you carry out an action, Dr. Michael, you are a pedagogue and also a researcher. Before an action is done, there must be a statement of problem. What statement of problem I have been given so that you are coming out with solutions? What hypotheses are you working on? What are the research questions you are working on to solve? None of these NGOs have those hypotheses. None of these NGOs are able to state the statement of problem in the locality, because the government cannot be everywhere. We keep saying, Mr. Liu, municipality may be existing, but cannot be everywhere. So it takes the cumulative effort of individuals and NGOs to raise this alarm. So you raised a question and asked the reaction of NGO. I want to see the population themselves also. Sometimes they are not helping issues. Because when a situation happens like that, we expect a coup d'etat. We also expect the population to rally and go and say, okay, raise some support to the people in that localities, like what happened in Buea. How many persons, how many communities in Buea actually raise resources to go and give to these people? Like Moya, what did the chief of Moya and his people do? What did the chief of Maisisi and his people do? What did the chief of Moliko and the people do? What did they actually do cumulatively to go and support the people, the victim? They say a friend in need is a friend indeed. The Bible says, whatsoever you do to the least of my brother, that you do unto me. So in terms of the population of support, the population of support has not been strong enough. In fact, the population of support has been limited to the government. And everybody is now looking on the government. I will tell you that if you get up in your house, sometimes if your water is not flowing, you blame the government, which sometimes is a fault from you. Every population, like Dr. Michael was talking about the issue of coup d'etat, even political parties had the right to do a coup d'etat, to go and support. But we have not seen this in the local population itself. In other areas, I watched in Ukraine a report the other time where a man who had 4 children went to war to defend the country and he was killed. The people in that neighborhood have been providing food to that family. What do we do in the African culture? That's what we do, to visit. But the population have not been doing that. And I want to say that until we take up a responsibility that we are the first responders, because when incident happens like this, there's what we call the first respondent. The first responder usually is not the government or the rescue mission. The first responder are the immediate people in that environment not affected or who saw what happened and rushed there. And the first responder are the neighbors in that locality. And that's why when you go, when rescue officers come, they ask questions to the first respondent. What happened? How many people are living in this area? How many people have done this? How many? So the population in itself, Mr. Kum, need to collectively come together. And I want to conclude by saying that we should not just base our mind on these NGOs, because these NGOs have failed us woefully.
Now, Dr. Michael Ndimancho, we are going to be witnessing a future natural disasters in Cameroon, and instead of preparing and mobilizing the population on how to react and save souls, we are using these occurrences for political gains. We see what almost every activist is doing, using this instead of doing rushing for relief. We are doing politics with the plight and demise of the population across the border.
Yes, this is the very thing I started decrying, Mr. Kum, that people want to use the blood of people, people want to swim in the blood of people to get their political gains, which is wrong, which is totally wrong. No blood of any individual is worth your political ambition. And I usually say this, that there are little things that you can do that would matter, that will help the population to rally behind you. Because if you ask me, how the population of that particular locality or the population in Cameroon as a whole, because I'm talking about Cameroon because most of those political party leaders who went with their cameras and all of those, means that they wanted the whole country to see that. Yes, exactly. Even the son of the president was there. They wanted everybody to see that they were there. So, I mean, I'm asking myself, what impact? Because everybody has a judgment. And the judgment is usually scientific, like Tah Mai was talking about research. Everybody, even those who are not going to school, they do scientific judgment. You were there, and what impact did you create? So I think that there are little things that people can do that would call for attention more than this one-man show that that these people have done. And permit me here to also decry that, Mr. Kum, that most of our leaders, too, maybe they are copying from them, because most of them have the eye of condolence that only across the board, across Cameroon. We have had crisis internationally, like the earthquake in Turkey, where the Cameroon government sent a lot of money. The Minister of Territorial Administration will carry the cash, tens of billions, millions of francs CFA to the Turkish government to assist in the earthquake that happened in France. Look at the Charlie Hebdo incident, where you found the African president of Benin and of exactly. Look at the cathedral in Paris. So I think that we tend to have sympathy, I mean, for things that are of less, I mean, let me not say less, but things that concern, I mean, no, you don't have any proximity in our sympathy. Our sympathy, it has, I mean, effect rather when it touches on issues that are far away from us. So I think we have to start nursing that concern for our own immediate brothers and sisters. People say there's a cliche that charity begins at home. It's a cliche, and it works so well. You cannot pretend to love somebody out of Cameroon when you don't love your immediate brother. It's just like somebody who pretends to say that he loves God so much, but you, my next brother, I do not love you, because that image of God is in you. So I think that talking about the political parties, they should be able to come out with a fund, and I've talked about this. Somebody who really wants to steer the show and let Cameroonians believe in him. Because
but should we be thinking of coming with a phone when the nation is mourning? We forget our political leanings and go for the common good. Look at what is happening in Israel. Yes. Where Israel is attacked, they say no, let us come together and form a united front.
Of course, coming out with a phone, it means that it's a united front, because when you come out with a fund, I mean solidarity fund, it is not just for you. Sometimes when somebody dies, like we had the political party leader of SDF who died, you open a book. That book is not just for SDF members. That book is not just for particular people. It's for everybody to come for a condolence. That's what I'm saying, that somebody should take the first move. Somebody should take the first move. And is that person taking the first move that is going to be regarded. And in times like this, is the time that the country is supposed to be much more united. There should be no color. There should not be no SDF. There should be no CPDF. There should not be USDP. There should not be Frankies. So, meaning that what? There should be a united front. There should be a Cameroon.
Okay, there should be a united front and Cameroon. Good evening, Mr. Liu. I am learning lessons behind you. People, this is from Kakmu Roland in Bengeni, Nanga Eboko, who now takes responsibility for what has happened to these people. We don't know who was sanctioned. It is true that it is an accident, but accidents occur with travel agencies and people are held accountable. Accidents occur in train stations and people are taken to court to pay for it. Ngwashi happened, nobody was held responsible. Buea happened and nobody was asked to justify why they did not do their job. Mbankolo has happened and seemingly they are saying that, oh, we want for people not to stay there. But if people were warned not to stay there and nobody did their job, is it not time for people to answer for this?
Of course. Yeah. If you listen to what the minister said, not Mr. Tanganji, but the minister said we have been warning that rain will fall, wind, you cannot stop wind, you cannot stop this, you cannot stop that. We have been warning. But the question now is, what did you do? What action did you take? It was all about warning, but not all about warning people not to stay in that locality. That will, okay, you have warned that rain will fall. That, okay, what next? Now, the issue that we are stating here categorically is that it's because people have not been able to be sanctioned. And when an accident occurs by a traveling agency, that traveling agency is suspended from 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. When an accident occurs in any of the sector, there's something, somebody goes in for it. I want to tell you that the government must do the following thing, as I said, and I want to reiterate. First, set a commission of inquiry on the Mbankolo situation. Because the moment you start punishing people, it will deter a lot of illegal settlement. It will deter a lot of people from building from high-risk areas. When the government set a commission of inquiry, the next thing that that commission of inquiry needs to do is just 4 key questions they have to ask. First, how many persons have building permits in this locality? Because I agree with Dr. Michael Ndimancho, you cannot have electricity in your area from AES or Ewane now without you presenting your site plan, without you presenting documents that it is your land. Now, if that electricity was taken to that locality, it means that it was a legitimate site for construction. That is the first. And who legitimize the construction? That should be the question now. Because it's that person that takes the responsibility. In as much as I've been saying that we as citizens of our country has the sole responsibility, first, before looking up to the government also is the guarantor of national security, sovereignty, unity, protect lives and property. Now, who gave the valid documents that this person built? Second, who did the survey that this person had these land titles or possibly building permit? Because these are the persons that must be held responsible. This is where honesty and integrity comes in, and also where justice and resettlement begins. Now, after you identify who actually gave it, now you can now do an investigation. If nobody is established that nobody has a building permit in that locality, then we will say the council was incompetent also. Because you cannot escape. There are 2 possibilities. If you do not give the land title, but you saw people building there, these people have voters card. I will shock you that some of them have voters card. Some of them have been voting in election. Campaigns have been taking place in those localities.
There are government services.
There's government services in those localities. Yes. It's proven. Now, why are these services there? If you claim that you have been warning people, it means something is not clear. Either way, you must pay. Because if you assume that you do not give land title, what were you doing when these people were building in that locality? If you assume that, okay, I gave land title, how did you give land title after you realized that that area was a high-risk zone? So either way you must go in for. And I want to beg on the president of this country and the prime minister, whom I know is very firm in issues like this, that a commission of inquiry, their prime minister, should be set up. Once this commission of inquiry is set up and ask this question, who gave the land title, how did they have it, and all these questions are answered, then People are punished for this. I want to tell you, dear Prime Minister, that all these other areas, you will not need to tell people not to give illegal land titles.
Okay. Good evening, Mr. Liu. Love the landslide program of tonight. Kindly permit me to deviate a bit. The My Media Prime cable line supplier in Bamenda is not serious with people's subscriptions. We pay and don't get images within the specified time. Let him be called to order, please. Funwe is writing from Bamenda. Funwe, can you please send me the person's number so that we can also reach out to him? Good evening, Mr. Liu. Being said, the ongoing floods in northern Cameroon are caused by heavy rainfall resulting from tropical weather, a disruption, deforestation, and improper agricultural practices. Solution to landslide, proper land use planning, zoning regulations, and building codes can minimize vulnerability to floods and other disaster. Chrysogonus writing from Misaje subdivision in Dunga Mantung division. I love this program. Thank you very much. We're talking about sanctions. There are persons who are also constructing commercial houses on such lands, and people are dying from it. Who is to blame? Should such persons also be asked? Why? Because they are putting the lives of people in danger. But those who are also going to rent to live in such areas, should they not be questioned?
Well, and you understand that most of these people who are even constructing these houses, there are people who are well-to-do, people who are known. Mm-hmm. Yes, they are not even people who are ignorant in the society. There are people who are known, and even within the government, people have top positions in government. People are supposed to enlighten others, and you see, they inflict other people to get into these kind of troubles, you know. And I always talk about the issue of the desperate citizen. I'm that kind of the voice of that voiceless, of that desperate citizen. That I believe that there are some citizens who really need to be educated. We don't just have to maybe think that it's not everyone who sees danger. But some people need to be told that here there is danger. Yes. Why some people test water with 1 foot, some people test water with 2 feet. We have to understand that fact. And that it is a rule of the government to be able to educate these people. It's a rule of the civil society to educate these people. It is a rule of the political parties to educate these people. But when people we think are those to savage us from these ills, from these dangers, are those people who rather open us the highway to this danger, then we begin to ask ourselves whether we are safe in this country. So I think you find they are what we call opportunists. Those who have their money and they do not even know how to use it. You are even talking about those who build houses and then people in those dangerous places and people rent. What about those who even kill in order to have the money? If people should kill, trample on blood to have money, why is it about building a house where in a dangerous place where someone will come and rent? So I think that it is an issue of the conscience. And when people refuse to reason, I think that there should always be that reasoning voice or that reasoning department that should come to them. And yeah, that is it. That we should reactivate. We should reactivate those departments that are supposed to be functional and assisting in the development of this country. And talking about reactivating this department, I'm talking about the Department of Meteorology, I'm talking about the Department of Civil Protection, I'm talking about the Department of Geology, I'm talking about departments that are supposed to take care of the lives of the people. We know, yes, and we accept that it cannot be 100% sure that you are protecting the people, but at least from the innermost part of your heart and from your own formation, because you are employed to do that particular job, that at least you should do your almost best, that you should render the service for which you were employed to do, and that if something happens that is above your own capability or your own making, then we understand that you tried and you tried your best and it happened. Now we cannot blame nature, and now we cannot blame other circumstances. But to say that people are oblivious to their work, they just sit in their laurels, they take money, and they don't do what they are supposed to do. People are careless about the lives of other people, because I know that there are a lot of people who have passed at that place. And I must say that there is a journalist who wrote about this. There is a journalist, I'm forgetting his name. There is a journalist who wrote about the danger of that political place in Mbankolo.
but nobody took it seriously. And when it happened, it happened. And we think that many other people should open up their minds. Like Tah Mai Jarvis talked about the NGOs. Let people be able to not only look at where money could come in for them, because some people, they indulge in things that money will come in. I mean, because like now, they know that a lot of aid will be coming in. That is when NGOs now become active. They are people who distribute the aid. They only work to distribute. They don't work to be able to preempt, to stop issues from happening. Because if they stop, it's just like the NGOs are acting like the UN now, whereby the UN will not want to stop the war. Because if you stop the war, what will happen with the workers that are supposed to be paid and as workers that are supposed to? So we think that people should do their work, people should life of others matter, and that people should do all in their capacity to save life.
Yeah, I want us to be pragmatic. We're talking about the situation, the flood situation that took the world by storm in Buea, killing people along its road, and now the Mbankolo incident. We also are aware of what happened in Bafoussam that claimed lives. Are we not also in a situation where administrative and municipal authorities may not actually be informed of what is happening within their respective municipalities? We have more of armchair administrators who would not go down to the field and see for themselves how the people are living, because I'm sure some of them are also taken by surprise, because when you say light exists, water exists, it is the population that manages their way to pull these resources or services to these areas. Do we have field municipal administrative authorities who go down to observe? Take the case of what they call Katiebo Menda around Lokbesu. Terrible. When you look at are people, are these guys aware of where their population live?
Mr. Kum, there are two ways. First, I want to testify that we've had divisional officers who have moved to the field, meet the people's store, and also,
but meet the people to meet the people. They are receiving. I'm
coming. So that I just want to be balanced here. We've had meet the people's store, and we've also had situation where chiefs have been going around. We've had situation where the mayor says, "I'm going to my municipality," but the question is, what actually is the field operation you go and carry? That's the question. Because I will tell you that if you look at what is happening in the United States, you have been to Canada, mayors of that locality know their municipality. In fact, they are reachable all the time. They receive feedback all the time, and they move. But let me come now to our own situation. I don't want to use the North and South because they will say there's insecurity. I want to come to the other regions where you will not tell me that there's insecurity. How often does the mayor of Douala 5 move around his municipality?
Do the people know him?
Second, you just remove the words in my mouth. Second, do the people even know the mayor? Do the people even know their councillors? The people in this Douala 5 and Douala 6 and Douala 4 and Douala 3, do they know their councillors? Because it begins from the councillor. The councillor is a person that knows their locality, that takes the plight of the people and go now to the municipality.
So that people can easily rush to his door and say
this is what we have. And so when the councillor takes, go now to the mayor picks, and how often do the people know their councillors? They don't.
Do they know their senators?
They don't even know their senators. They don't. Something has happened. Let me focus on this question. Now, this has happened in other countries. We will see the parliament, the Congress will call these administrative authorities in a parliamentary hearing to find out what actually happened. Maybe it's the laws that they have been enacted. People have to pay. But in our own side, we'll just say where it has happened. We'll give relief materials. Divisional officers have been doing their job somehow, but how effective? Let me come to the municipality itself, the mayors. Well, you know that there's something in Douala which is called Keep Douala Clean every Thursday. But let me tell you how cleanup is done in Douala. People lock their shop up, and they wait till 12 o'clock. The municipal councillors only go around to see which shop is open so that they can seal and you pay. That's their job. But now, in front of that shop that you're about to seal, it's not clean. The gutters have been blocked. But in other countries, we'll see the mayor who go down to the field, will be leading by example. President Paul Kagame has been spotted on numerous occasions on the streets cleaning. The governor of Abia State, Alex Oti, who was recently elected, in all the keep clean, have been on the street himself with his gloves and carrying. How many times have you seen our own mayors leading, not even walking, leading the delegation for keep Douala clean, keep Buea clean, keep Bamenda clean? How many times? Because it is in areas like that that you get to know what is happening. Also, how many times have our mayors across Cameroon have a caucus or a meet the people within a municipality to address them, to get question and answer from them, to know what is happening in their municipality? How many times? That's leadership. Leadership doesn't just mean that you carry out action. Before you carry out action, when you meet the people, the problem the state they give you is what is called a statement of problem. So that when you go back to your municipality, you are now resolving their problem. Because we don't have this. Our municipal officials have become more presidential than the president of our republic. And that is a problem. Because they are supposed to be the foot soldiers. And oftentimes we blame the head of state. You have people blaming the head of state. These municipal officials have also a role to play. Let me give you another example. When you go down to Bamenda, before the crisis, we have budgets being built in, we have municipal roads and we have state roads. Those municipal roads, how often were they maintained? But budgets have been built. Now, the mayors have the role, that's what we call the municipality. They have to own their municipality. If you ask the mayor now in any of this municipality, how many houses do you have in your locality? They will not know. How many bridges do you have in that locality? Total, they will not know. These are data that you must have. You must have your data. You must know what is happening in your locality. And that's why we plead that the Minister of Territorial Administration need to get these people on board. Needs to get them to know that they have to own their municipality.
Minister of Decentralization.
Decentralization, rather.
Now, this issue of accountability, do the people actually know who to run to in situations like this? Because there are cases where you should know which gendarmerie brigade to call, police to call, and maybe municipal authority. Do people really know who is representing their quarter at the municipal level?
Now, Mr. Leo, sometimes you are used to going to Yaoundé. Anyway, you don't follow fights in Yaoundé. When you enter a ministry in Yaoundé, there is a notice that is written, services are free here. By the mere understanding and interpretation of that notice, it means that, in effect, services are paid. Because that is why that notice is. Because people know that services are paid and they are not supposed to be paid. Now, let me narrow it down. Have you ever had a problem in the night, a burglary problem, and you call a police station or a gendarmerie, and you have the reply that they do not have a car or they do not have the logistics to come to where you are? Why am I saying this? I'm saying that the population is frustrated. And at one moment they say, I take care of myself. That is what is happening. Because you will go to a competent service to lay a complaint, and it appears as if you have to pay for your complaint to be heard. And people don't have that time to waste. People are desperate, and they don't have what is required to ask services that are supposed to be free to come to them. That's why there's this nonchalant attitude towards, and people say, who cares? No one cares to know who is in charge of what any longer. I think that it is the responsibility of the government now to revamp the services and let the people know that, and to know, for people to know that the services are free and that the government has actually instituted it. The people need to be educated and they need to see proof of it. Because you will not have, for example, I would say you are in a quarter and you have somebody who just come and abuse, and then the waste is just flowing all over. And you go further to report. You even realize that you who has taken that report there, you are the one who is being even punished for that report that you came to give. So you find that in Cameroon, it is now who you are. And that if you do not have anybody in front there to lay a complaint, have you heard Cameroonians say, ask a question, do you know who I am? Tu connais qui je suis? These are some of the statements in Cameroon that we have to stamp out. And those statements have a backing. Because when you say, tu connais qui je suis, it means that what? You are highly connected and you have somebody in front there that even you know that you're on the right, but your right is going to be transformed to a total wrong because there is somebody up there to tackle or to confront you. So the people with all of these have become frustrated, and then they ask themselves, they are now in a dilemma at a crossroad, and they're asking, where else can we go? If you cannot have a way to report and your report with second consideration, why do you go again to report? What is even the interest of knowing who a councillor is? What is the interest of knowing who a mayor is? What is the interest of knowing who a commissioner is, or a general commander is, or a senator is? When you know, I gave an experience, say of the bishop of the North State in Nigeria, Bishop Martin Oko, who went to the US and met some brilliant Nigerians who have completed from some very powerful university, and he asked them, you have completed, why are you not going back to serve your people back home? And the reply was touchly. They said, we do not have senators as uncles. We do not have ministers as cousins. So what are we going back to do in Nigeria? So you find that issue. It is something that is happening in Cameroon where you feel that having information is a privilege and not a right.
Mbankolo has happened, lives taken, houses destroyed, amongst others. Many persons have been injured and being attended to in different health facilities in Ewane, the nation's capital. What next? We have also listened to persons who were victims of the floods in Buea narrating their story. These houses have been destroyed. Are we sure that in 25 years in Mbankolo, houses are no longer going to be erected in same locations?
Why are you going for in 25 years? Did you not hear our father in Buea who said he's molding his blocks to build back his house in that same area? You will see it there. The reason is because people are not held accountable. I can assure you in Mbankolo, that 25 years is so much. It's too much. Just wait. After 3 years, possibly there's some people who will be hesitant to even leave the area, and gradually it becomes a new normal. And they will say, nah, it has happened. They say, so yeah, that's the mentality. But because we don't punish, the state doesn't, the central government doesn't take the responsibility to punish. Because the moment the central government will say, okay, you know what? We want to know who was in charge of this place. We are setting a commission of inquiry. A commission of inquiry should not only be limited to the Northwest and Southwest armed conflict. It should not only be limited when there's an insurgency or something like when people are fighting in a locality. I have said this, that we have 3 levels of violence. We have the structural violence, we have the cultural violence, and direct violence. Structural violence, when a group of people feel that they are more important than others. And no, that's cultural. When a group of people feel that they are more important than others, and so they deprive others of the opportunity that they need to have, like Mr. Dr. Ndimancho said. When you hear people tell you to connect qui je suis, instead of saying to connect, do you know what the law states? They will tell you to connect qui je suis. In other countries, they will tell you, do you know what the law said? Do you know I can sue you? I can call the police on you. But in Cameroon, do you know who I am? Because you know it's not the law, it's who you are. And that's why we are saying that when people are punished, when the law is put down and say, okay, this is what the law states. Before you build the house, you must contact A, B, C, and D. Now, you have built the house, it means you contacted A, B, C, and D. A, B, C, and D gave you the land title, of which the law states that you should not build there. Therefore, the person who gave you the land title, go in for it. And so, when that is made public, the others in other areas will start sitting up, will start saying that, hey, bro, this thing I can go in for. I will not disturb your house. You give me money, I will not give you document. The person now will start saying, hey, but why are you not issuing me my document? So it's no need for me to pay you. So it starts reducing that level. But the moment where we instead celebrate and go when this crisis happens, only go to say, well, sorry, take this, take Maggie. I think that we are supporting the situation than mitigating it. So what I would say based on this is that in the next 5 years, you see a house in Mbankolo. In the next 2 years, you see a house. Go everywhere that we have had this natural disaster. Even in Douala, where we have had floods. Areas that we have seen floods, terrible floods. Houses are still there. In fact, government services are running in those areas.
It's true. We've had terrible floods in Douala, and the following year you see house mushrooming around it. Yeah.
This there's something I want to call your attention. You see this road going to Sablo. We know that there's always flood there. That bridge, the second bridge, was built. Hopefully that it will take away the flood. But let me tell you, we know that flood is there. Every year flood is there. We are not doing anything, but we know that every year flood blocks people from crossing and from crossing out. But we know.
And houses are being constructed.
And the houses are being constructed.
Dr. Michael Ndimancho, what should be the next moves by both government, civil society when natural disasters occur?
Yeah, when natural disasters occur, there should be stock taking. And when we talk about stock taking, is going back to some important questions, like Tah Mai Jarvis was talking about in research. You should ask yourself, what happened? Yes, it was a natural disaster. The second question, could what has happened have been could we have been preempted or be prevented? This is the second question they ask. If it couldn't be prevented, okay, fine. What is the way forward? But if it could be prevented, who was in charge of having to do this? People should be spotted, and people's responsibility should be spotted out
and established.
This is what is supposed to be done. And now they ask yourself, now what is the way forward for other areas and for other natural disasters? Because you realize that sometimes we do it and then we sleep on what has happened, and then we forget that another one will happen in future, and not just in that place but in another place. So one incident in one place should open our eyes to other incidents in other areas in Cameroon and say, okay, it has happened here like this. Let us be able to see those who are in charge of this department. Can you be able to go around the country and you find out those possible places where this particular thing could happen, so that we don't have the same thing happen again? Sometimes this is the way you take stock about something, and then you bring in stringent measures to take and get people to task, people to responsibility, and spot people for to show them if those who punish, you punish. You keep your hands on the table.
We are going to end this edition of Prime Hour with this report once again by Buea.
As officials proceed with preventive destruction of houses in Mbankolo, survivors and those displaced by the incident have taken up temporary residence in Kum. The humanitarian crisis caused by the landslide has affected the ability of children to go back to school, rendering many families homeless.
What happened was truly a disaster. Although when it happened, it's my mother that discovered it and asked us to run.
We are not used to this kind of life. We hope this ends soon. We want the government to look for a suitable place for us. At the Ewane Central Hospital, some injured survivors are recovering, with doctors indicating that many will be discharged in the days ahead.
Nous avons fait le tour et nous constatons que les blessés sont très bien encadrés, bien suivis.
We have noticed that the injured are well taken care of. Some will be discharged in few days. As you know, the head of state has addressed his condolences to the bereaved families. He has wished the injured a quick recovery and has asked us to take care of them and accompany the survivors in every way possible.
Et il nous a chargé d'assurer l'encadrement des blessés et d'accompagner matériellement, financièrement et psychologiquement ceux qui sont les victimes de ce drame.
Faced with this scenario, architects have been sensitizing the population to respect construction norms.
You know, we know the laws, but we always want to cut corners. Even the person wanting to build his house, instead of coming to see a professional, will go and look for a technician that is not qualified because they want to build at a low cost. And consequently, we have what we're experiencing all over the place. People build where they are not supposed to build. People build in swampy areas. People build without respecting norms. The quality of materials are not respected. people build and nothing is being done even in areas that are where they are not to build, and there's a lot of anarchy. It's rather unfortunate concerning the construction sector in the country.
Government officials on ground say if the population followed instructions, this disaster would have been prevented.
Il y a l'eau, le feu et le vent. Donc si vous êtes installé sur l'axe d'évacuation ou d'écoulement naturel de l'eau, lorsque l'eau voudra passer, l'eau va passer.
There are three things we cannot stop: water, the wind, and fire. So if you've constructed near a gutter, you have to be careful. It is difficult to stop water. We released lots of press statements 1 month ago to indicate that the weather will not be good. We announced that we will have torrential rainfall. We alerted mayors and the public to leave risky zones.
Les populations qui sont installées sur des zones non édificantes disent qu'ils libèrent ces zones-là pour que les eaux trouvent leur chemin. Et ça, c'est sur l'ensemble du territoire.
Councils and people of goodwill have been showing up with support to survivors. Many of them were already settled, but are now obliged to restart life from zero following the unfortunate disaster.
Thank you, Buea, for that great report. And it is with a report that we draw the curtains for tonight's edition of Prime Hour out here in our studios at Fangudrombange, Koto, Douala. Thank you for accepting our invitation, Dr. Michael.
Thanks so much, Mr. Liu. And of course, I want to really, from the bottom of my heart, send my condolences to all those who have been touched in one way or the other. And of course, if a Cameroonian is touched, every Cameroonian are touched. And I really think that people should sit up. Because if you really have a conscience, and because the conscience is always the judge on each and every one of us, that you were supposed to do something to prevent the death of someone, and you lackadaisically let it go, then you really feel that your conscience is really going to traumatize you and judge you. Greetings to all the Cameroonians.
Thank you to you, Tah Mai Jarvis, for answering present today.
Thank you. I want to beg on our Prime Minister, head of government, to use his fatherly love to ask for a commission of inquiry, because this is the only justice and preventive measures to know whether these people had building permits, who gave the building permit, and now they should be also be judged and such that the state can assume responsibility not just on providing the social amenities or resources to the persons, but by preventing other situations which may occur. Thank you.
Thank you all also for watching tonight's edition of Prime Hour on My Media Prime TV. Thank you, Desmond and Eli, for production. Good night.